All right, we turn our attention to the event of yesterday, the inauguration of the 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Well, yesterday was like the icing on the cake, especially if you follow the process or all of the rhetorics leading to who would be the, nominee of the different political parties, whether it was the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Of course, we know how that's turned out. Eventually, Trump clinched the ticket of his party, the Republican Party, amidst all the furor and assassination attempts. And then, of course, Kamala Harris, following the persuasion of Biden to step back, became the flag bearer of the Democratic Party, election held in November. And when I was announced. Yesterday was the climax of it all with the inauguration of now President Donald J. Trump. However, across the world, it will appear America under Trump is already sneezing and the code is palpable, whether it has to do with trade or international politics, diplomacy, or supporting multilateral institutions like the United Nations, NATO, and so on and so forth. The question of how Trump would cooperate, that is, if he would cooperate at all, is very salient. And then, of course, there's the issue of China on the one hand, and they have the rest of the world, like, say, Iran. And then the questions around how will he, by way of policy and disposition, all right, react to the war in Ukraine, of course, the Russia-Ukraine war, and the conflict between Israel and, as they now say, Hamas, even though some people will say it's actually Palestine. But in all of this, the Trump element is the concern for many people across the world. You come back to Nigeria, for example, you realize that this country has just joined BRICS as a partner. What does that mean for Nigeria under Trump leadership in the U.S., which, of course, is the police of the world? These are part of the several questions that are crying for answers at this point. I'm joined by someone who has a handle on these developments, especially as it has to do with the dynamics around the U.S. Election system and how it plays into electing the president and ultimately how that president carries themselves, whether it's the Democratic side of it or the Republicans. So in all, Trump is the centrality of our conversation this morning. I'm joined by a lawyer and a public affairs analyst, Robinson Roberts. First of all, I'll say Happy New Year, even though this is the 21st day of another year.
Happy New Year. Great to be here.
Yeah, the pleasure is all ours. So you and I were last here talking about Trump and issues around his chances at the White House. But of course, as we now know, events have overtaken all of that, right? When you look at the events of yesterday, for instance, what are the highlights, not just about the razzmatazz or the glitz and glamour, as they call it, but the Trump rhetorics, as it has to do with the interaction, so to speak, between the United States under his leadership and the rest of the world?
I think yesterday was a great day for the United States of America, and some people will say for the world as well. They now have the 47th president of the United States of America, and I think even during the inauguration, all the living presidents of the U.S. Were present. You had George Washington Bush, you had Barack Obama, and of course Joe Biden and his vice Kamala Harris. And it was more like a fanfare, but notwithstanding the fanfare, Trump has gotten to work immediately. He didn't wait for anything. Just yesterday, just after his swearing in, he already issued out a record-breaking number of executive orders that has taken effect already, including withdrawing the United States of America from the World Health Organization. He did that, signed that executive order yesterday. So he's giving a clear statement to both America and the rest of the world that it's no longer business as usual. There's a new sheriff in town, and of course the impact is going to be felt from the very first day. He also pardoned, I think,
about 100, like it's almost 500.
1,500
from January 6th insurrection.
You call it.
That's controversial.
It's highly controversial, actually. Yeah, but of course the protests that took place in January.
So it's about semantics, really.
Yes, I think it's more of protest. If you say insurrection is an act to take over government. Were they with guns? They were not with guns, so they didn't go there to shoot anybody or to kill anybody. They just went there to protest. So you cannot really call it an insurrection. What does insurrection mean?
So that level of violence does not amount to insurrection or something close to it.
Insurrection is an act to take over government.
So that was not the intention of that.
That wasn't the intention. They
movement.
didn't intend to take over the government. They were just there to protest, to make their voice heard. That they felt that there were irregularities in the election, and that they needed it to be looked into. That they shouldn't rush and certify the results of the 2020 election. So, of course, if the Democrats, they call it an insurrection, but if you want to look at it from outside, and then what is the meaning of insurrection and what they did, nobody went there with guns to shoot anybody. They didn't kill anybody. They didn't, like, none of the security officials were killed or harmed by those, in quotes, insurrectionists. Meanwhile, one of the protesters were killed, and she wasn't without, like, she wasn't attacking anybody. She wasn't fighting anybody.
She was unarmed.
Yeah, she was unarmed. Yeah, even if she was a veteran. Yeah, but she was unarmed, so you can't really call it an insurrection. Some people call it that, it's fine, but if you look at the meaning of insurrection and what they were actually doing there, it's more like protest. I think the right way to describe it would be January 6th protesters. So Trump already issued blanket pardon for about 1,500 of them, and I think 6 people were given commutal of their sentences, like Stewart Rhodes, who is the leader of the Oath Keepers. He's already served about 3 years, so he just committed it to the term that has already been served, so he's going to be free at once. So it's no longer a business as usual. Clearly, the man is there to work, and he also issued, I think, an executive order revoking the 14th Amendment, which had to do with birthright citizenship. So there's no longer that travel to go and give birth, and then your child
and grab an American passport.
Yes, get an American passport. It doesn't work anymore. You have to earn it. If you want to be an American, you have to be either a permanent resident, the child of a permanent resident, or a citizen at the time of the birth of
So the
child.
criteria fundamentally have changed.
Yes, it has changed. It's no longer once you're born in the in the US, because some people, they do birth tourism, they travel just to go and give birth, and then the people coming in from the southern border as well, from Mexico and the likes, they just enter into the US, give birth, and automatically say their child is now an American citizen, which is supposed to get all the full benefits. So according to him, which is true anyway, there's no country in Europe that does that. Like, no country, not the UK, not Italy, not Spain, none of them.
You have to pass through the meal.
Yeah, you have to pass through it. So he's not opposed to immigration, but it just has to be legal immigration. So he's sending a clear message to the rest of the world, and his people, at least more than 50% of them, are very happy with the steps he's been taking so far. Of course, you always have critics in whatever you do. So of course there are some persons that are not very pleased with it, but I think majority of the US citizens are very okay with some of his decisions so far. And then he also, I think, issued an executive order calling the Gulf of Mexico Gulf of America. So they no longer recognize that area as the Gulf of Mexico, but it's now an American property. And then the Panama Canal as well is also going to be U.S. canal. So the man is he's swinging into action as soon as possible. And I think the Senate also confirmed Senator Marco Rubio just yesterday as well as the Secretary of the State of the U.S. So he has a want to also be interfacing with other countries around the world. On
behalf of the US.
Yeah, on behalf of the US, exactly. So they're swinging right into action, and we expect to see more rollouts done today as well.
And it is ahead. By the way, Robert, is it not safe at this point to say that the Trump we are seeing now, at least the one we had seen just yesterday, is the same as the Trump we had witnessed between 2021 and between 2007 and 2017 and 2021?
2021. I think it's an upgraded Trump.
Like this is Trump 2.0.
Yes, it's Trump 2.0. Yeah, but the good thing is he's actually doing exactly what he campaigned that he was going to do. He didn't deceive anybody. He didn't tell anybody that I'm going to do this and is here doing something differently. if you talk about the emergency in the southern border, it was one of the things he campaigned on, that this is what I'm going to do. He also campaigned that he's going to, the US government going forward will recognize only two genders, male and female, which is assigned at birth, and he signed that executive order to that effect yesterday as well. So he's doing it. During the signing of those executive orders, he even mentioned it, that he's more experienced now. So he knows much more compared to 2016 when he got to power. That most people, and if in fact even himself knew it, that he was inexperienced. So he was like more of a neophyte in that political field. It's just something that he said, let's give it a shot. So let's try and see. And then surprisingly, to the surprise of the world, actually, it worked out for him in 2016. So he's more experienced now. Clearly, he knows what he's doing. He knows the best people that will suit positions. He already nominated members of his cabinet anyway, most of them, which we expect the Senate to continue the confirmation hearing and confirm some of them in the days ahead. So I think you rightly described him, Trump 2.0. We should always all expect a Trump 2.0. He's not missing words at all. Clearly, it's a statement of the withdrawal of the US from the WHO, World Health Organization. Some of the things he did in his first tenure anyway. Biden came and revoked that, and he has reversed it on his very first day in office. And of course, he also said that with the NATO alliance, definitely the US is most likely going to remain with NATO, but sending a clear signal to the European countries that they'll have to be contributing more going forward. They don't expect the US to be fighting their whole battles for them.
And spoon-feeding you.
And spoon-feeding them, exactly. They'll have to be contributing more if they want the alliance to be maintained. Of course, there's going to be that NATO alliance. He already nominated someone anyway to be an ambassador of the US to NATO, so and an ambassador to the UN as well. So he's remaining in the UN, he's remaining in NATO, but it's not going to be US doing everything this time around. There's going to be more focus on the United States of America. He acclaims himself as a patriot, as a nation first, America first. After America, they can talk about any other country. And then concerning the war in Ukraine, he already made it clear that they will have to end that war as much as possible. So they intend to. He's a businessman. He knows how to negotiate, make deals as well. So it's not. He understands that sometimes it's not a winner takes it all approach. You have to negotiate. You have to make some concessions to arrive at a mutually agreed terms. So he's already signaling that to both Ukraine and Russia that will have to come to the table. Ukraine will have to make some concessions, which they may be uncomfortable with, but people have to stop dying, and America has to stop sending weapons and lots of money to Ukraine to continue. Billions of dollars actually, and then Russia too would have to make some little concessions for that peace deal to be reached.
Let's talk about this issue of pulling out of this, pulling out of that. I mean, like he has pulled the US now on account of the executive order of yesterday from the World Health Organization. But let's move to issues around climate. Trump has never been big on climate-related issues. In fact, that's one of the things that pitted him against the rest of the world the other time he was here. All right. Issues around the Paris Agreement, for example, he doesn't want to touch that with a 1,000-foot pole, for instance. How much more drastic steps do you see these presidents taking in the days, weeks, and months ahead?
With regards to the Paris Agreement, I believe it's something that he's most likely going to revisit as well. He's most likely going to explore the option of withdrawing the US out of that again, because even one of his executive orders he signed into law yesterday was an emergency on the energy sector, and he made it clear that we are going to drill, baby, drill. Like we are going to focus on drilling lots of oil and make America energy reliant once again. You know, there was the whole issue within the about the Green New Deal that was focusing on as much as possible reducing carbon emissions in the US and trying to push US more into getting electric vehicles as opposed to vehicles that run on petroleum. Well, he said that is no longer sustainable. It's not going to happen. That they're going to put that Green New Deal completely aside and focus on making the U.S. energy reliance. They're going to be one of the most, they're going to be importing oil to the rest of the world. Now they're going to be one of the highest exporters of energy.
Not just buying.
Not just buying. No, they're not importing. They're going to be exporting. Sorry, yeah, they're going to be exporting oil. They are going to be making enough for themselves, and they are going to be exporting lots of oil to the rest of the world to buy this time around. They're not going to be buying from others or be energy reliant on anybody. So yeah, it's something we are expecting to see probably within his first 100 days or within a year. Definitely is going to revisit that Paris Agreement, and most likely he's not a fan of it at all, as you know, and his base as well, the Republican Party, they don't buy into the whole issues of climate change being an existential threat. They feel it's something that it's not going to happen anytime soon. It's going to happen in probably over 100 or 200 years. So that the people that are just crying about climate, they're just crying wolf. So yeah.
All right, let's talk about the U.S.-China factor. I mean, that is no longer the elephant in the room now.
Exactly.
All right, Trump is back in the White House. It will appear for the last 4 years or so, China had some, had cause to heave a sigh of relief, as they call it. But from what we see, it seems that tension is on the horizon again.
Yeah, they most likely, it's even if they have any tension, it's going to be more like a trade conflict and like a cold trade conflict anyway. Right. It's not going to be
an outright war.
An outright war, not at all. Of course, China is also going to sidestep in some of the decisions they try to take. For example, about Taiwan, trying to go into Taiwan and all that, because Taiwan is a U.S. Ally. U.S. have their boots on the ground in Taiwan. They have a base, a military base in Taiwan, and so China is going to sidestep a bit on that, and also the trade aspect as well. Just like I said, Trump is a businessman, so he's not going to say he's fighting them directly. He's going to try to negotiate deals that are going to be beneficial. Of course, most likely give the U.S. upper hand anyway. For example, like the issue of TikTok, Supreme Court already banned TikTok, but Trump came in. He also issued an executive order concerning that as well, that as much as possible he gave a 90 days extension to TikTok, and then he said he wants to negotiate a deal with the owners of TikTok, that's the Chinese company, where a situation where they would sell most likely a higher percentage of shares in the entity
to the U.S. interest.
To the U.S. interest. So it's going to be more like a more U.S. owned company than a Chinese Communist Party in quotes owned entity. So yeah, those are some of the things we expect him to do. And of course, the whole world clearly knows that this is a strong ruler. This is somebody that he matches his words with action. He doesn't just say things. He is saying things, and some people feel like, yeah, it's a nut case because he may be irrational in some of the decisions he takes. Like he just swings and says, I'm going to do this thing, and he's doing it. For example, the whole issue of Panama Canal, personally I thought he was joking. I thought it was just a joke. I didn't know it was completely serious, which means the talk about owning Greenland as well.
Right.
It's something that is most likely going to be explored, because he said he's going to make them a deal. He's going to talk to Denmark and see how that will be achieved, but he intends to get Greenland for the United States of America. So he's not somebody that jokes around. It's somebody that says things and tries to do them as well. So the whole world knows that. Russia knows that. China knows that very well as well. So unlike Biden, that they felt the person there was kind of weak and they could do almost anything and get away with it. It's very clear that there's a new sheriff in town. It's no longer business as usual. So it's a signal to the rest of the world. And then, of course, there's also the mutual respect that exists within this between these world powers. China respects the US, and the US, of course, they know China is not a small country. They don't take China for granted at all. Other than the population, they are highly advanced when it comes to tech, and the military, any aspect you can think about. So there's some mutual respect. So Trump is a businessman. He'll try to negotiate deals with them. He's not going to go on an outright war. And he already said he's going to impose tariffs on most. He's not imposing the tariff on China as a country, but he's imposing tariff on the companies that try to operate in the US.
Right.
Yeah, that bring their business in US, makes their money in the business. Those are the entities he's going to be imposing tariffs on. So these are some of the things we're most likely going to see.
I think we need to lay this to bed now. Trump has never been particularly a friend of Africa. I mean, a continent of 54 nations, for example, and we'll have to spend, so to speak, the next 4 years with this man, the new president.
Yeah.
How do you see Africa turning out in terms of its relations, whether bilateral or any kind, with the U.S. under Donald Trump?
Okay, when you say he has never been a friend of Africa, I cannot say I fully understand that, because I thought
the context is, while he was there, he always railed against Africa. In the case of Nigeria, he called us the S-hole country, if you remember.
Okay.
I mean, there's a thinking behind that kind of remark. So let's talk about that for a second.
in reality, but to be very
You want to tell me that it was correct by that assessment?
it's not out of place. Some of the things he says, in reality, it's not out of place, because my goodness, if you look at African countries today, Nigeria today, and then compare them to a country like the US that he's coming from, and things that he has seen.
Do we all have to be like the US overnight?
You don't need to be like the US, but you can be like Qatar, you can be like UAE, because those countries transformed overnight as well, if that's what you want to call it. They transform overnight in just 20, 30 years. Nigeria is older than countries like Qatar, UAE. But yeah, because Nigeria is a good country, a blessed country, but the issue we have is leadership. Our leaders are something else. America is a country that works, democracy works. People voted, somebody campaigned, and people voted for the person, and it's very clear. So he's doing things to please the people that voted him into power, as opposed to countries like Nigeria and most African countries where we have snatch and grab and run, and then they say that they are the leaders of the country, and then they do things the way they like, give Nigeria a bad name. Yeah, it's the bad name. For example, Kemi Badenoch as well in the UK, continually reeling on Nigeria. So if Kemi is always saying bad things about Nigeria, which of course most of them are true anyway, and then Donald Trump says something as well, which is also true, and people are angry. It's funny. It's funny because if people travel out, like go to most of these countries, and then come to Nigeria and see the way things are being done here, you would almost shed tears. Actually, it's funny. Like, you would almost shed tears for real. So I don't blame him for some of the things he says, but I don't think he has any issue with citizens of these countries anyway, because even yesterday he made it clear that he doesn't have any problem with immigration. You just have to be legal, just come in legally. And if you see most of the actions he's taking, it's mostly centered towards the southern border, where there's an influx of illegal immigrants. So he doesn't have issue with somebody coming from Nigeria, because there are lots of Nigerians still gaining admission to
study in the US.
To study in the US.
Live legally, work
legally in the US. And Nigerians are actually one of the best group of migrants in the US, actually. So many people know that Nigerians are one of the best. You have Nigerians that are hardworking, doing very well in almost any field you can think about, the medical field, legal, almost everywhere. Nigerians are there, and they are excelling as well. They're doing really well. So it's just very, very, very few Nigerians in America that engages in illegal things that try to give the country a bad name. But of course, the overwhelming majority of Nigerians, they are doing really well. So there's still the pathway to legal immigration for Nigerians and Africans and almost anyone that wants to go to the US. Just do it the right way. If you're waiting in line and
take a turn
and get it. Yeah, exactly. So Trump doesn't really have problem with Africans, and the relationship is, there's not going to be any change or much change. But of course, clearly his focus is going to be on the United States of America. So after he does things for the US, if there's any little thing, of course,
afterthoughts.
Yeah, others can get it. Of course, you take care of your family first. Even the Bible says, "You shall be witnesses unto me." It didn't say in the uttermost part of the world first. It first of all said, first in Jerusalem, which is your nuclear family, and then in Judea, and then in Samaria, and then the uttermost part of the earth. So of course,
Charity begins at home.
it has to begin at home. You handle your home first. You give your children food first. Make sure your children have eaten before you go outside to do charity. You can't leave your children on an empty stomach, and you're giving money to somebody outside. Yeah, people outside will call you a good man, but it's going to be highly unfair to the ones that are your direct responsibility. That's why I even talked about the whole war in Ukraine. That we are going to focus on America first. Things are happening in America. You had the issue of ravaging fire in Los Angeles. You had the unfortunate hurricane that happened in Florida, and then the disaster in East Palestine the other time as well. So these are people that also need a humanitarian aid, right? So of course you have to focus on them first, take care of them, take care of the citizens. You have a lot of homeless people in the US, people that don't know won't know it. Or you go to St. Louis, Missouri, you go to Chicago, Illinois, you see lots of people, even white people, homeless, living outside. So of course you try as much as possible to help the ones you can help within first, and then if
strengthen the social safety nets back at home before you stretch to Ukraine and Gaza and the rest of the world. I would like to say a big thank you to you, Robert, for coming to share with us.
It's always my pleasure.
This morning I've been talking with Robinson Roberts, where he's a lawyer and public affairs analyst. We'll be talking about Donald Trump and what happens going forward now that he has been inaugurated the 47th president of the United States. That's what we're living in this morning. My colleague Queen Agaba, myself, and the entire team here at Global Television headquarters in Abuja, the capital city of Nigeria, we say thank you for spending the last 3 or so hours with us. Just a quick caveat that the views of all of our guests on all of our programs, including Global Morning, their opinions. I'm Wiyag Mofwebe. We'll see you again.